Ladies and gentlemen, my name's Paul, and in this Rick-Limited.com video, we're going to be discussing all things Intel. There will be another AMD video up today, which obviously goes through Vega and some other stuff, but this video is primarily focused upon Intel and an abomination of news which is circulating around the internet currently. So, the first thing we're going to discuss is Intel and the licensing of Radeon technology, which I know might sound a bit weird, but we'll go into that in a second. And then we're going to discuss Intel and the upcoming performance of the Xenon Scalable family. And then finally, we're going to finish the video with our friend and buddy known as Coffee Lake. So, this one's a bit weird, the first one we're going to start with, the first piece of news. And that is Intel and the licensing of graphics IPs from AMD. This one's very bizarre to discuss because Intel are, well, flat out denying it's true. AMD have said to the press that, well, no comment, and other sources in the media as well as the tech industry are telling us it is real. So the reason they're telling us that Intel are denying it, so in other words the sources are telling us that Intel are denying it because basically the chip is not ready to launch. They're saying it's ready to launch by end of this year, so it's natural Intel are going to deny it because they don't want obviously certain secrets to be revealed. So, what is going on here? Well, okay, I'll tell you the story in a very too long didn't read way. Originally the rumour was that Intel were licensing their graphics technology from Nvidia. That's not a rumour, that's factual. And basically they weren't happy with the arrangement. They felt that they were getting hosed. Okay, maybe not a technical term, but you get the idea with the licensing fees. They therefore wanted to transfer to AMD, which they felt that they could get cheaper fees. That was the rumour on the street. So, the idea behind this is that they weren't getting the technology, they were simply getting the awesome ability to not get sued, which is obviously kind of nice. Lawsuits in graphics technology and, well, technology as a whole are becoming pretty abundant at the moment, so the idea of not getting yourself open up to, well, litigation is quite nice. So, that was the original rumour. However, Kyle Bennett, along with other reporters, specifically on Fudzilla, although there are other websites that are reporting this as well, have told us that this is not actually the case any longer. In fact, the deal is a lot deeper. Basically, Intel will be striking a deal with AMD to integrate Radeon graphics, which can probably guess is going to be some derivative of Vega, but it might be Polaris, but let's assume it's going to be Vega orientated. And it's going to be integrated straight onto a CPU. Essentially, it's going to be an Intel APU, I guess, in some ways. And which is kind of weird because, well, Intel fans are, like, unsure if Gusta, and AMD fans in some ways are a bit pissed because of, obviously, the various APUs for Zen. Personally, I don't actually mind the idea because, well, ultimately it gives AMD a much needed cash injection. Let's just be honest here. More cash for AMD is probably a good thing. And honestly, I don't necessarily feel that the ability to buy an Intel CPU which has AMD cores is going to preclude the fact that you will then not buy an AMD CPU because it's got AMD cores, because obviously it's going to depend on other things such as pricing, the performance of the CPU side of things, how the APU is put together if it really is a full APU, and lots of other stuff. So once again, just to clarify, Intel are denying it, AMD are telling us that, well, there's no comment to it, but the word on the street is that it's real. So I'll leave it with you if you want to believe this one or not. Personally, I'm 50-50 on the rumour. It wouldn't surprise me if it's true, at the very least, that they've licensed the IP to not get sued. But whether we're going to be seeing, you know, some Radeon graphics card in the system, well, we just don't know. And one of the really early rumours, and this was back when AMD were really in trouble, there were rumours that Intel were actually thinking of buying AMD, but obviously that is not happening anymore. They're no longer in danger of that, so that's kind of good. Anyway, I want to discuss some Xeon stuff. Now, this is not an in-depth analysis by any stretch of the imagination. It's more a press release. We all know that Intel are doing their darndest to put out the Xeon Scalable family, which, ironically enough, given the fact we just discussed the fact that they're working in tandem, supposedly, with AMD, with their various GPU technologies, We all know that EPYC is coming to the data centers. EPYC, of course, is from AMD, and supposedly, if you go by their own benchmarks, it's considerably faster than current Intel performance, especially given the number of cores. But basically, Intel today have unveiled a significant, this is a press release, but significant performance advances in upcoming Xenon scalable processor scale. God damn it! Intel Xeon, processor scalable family at the Sapphire Now conference, and has shown up to a 1.59 times higher Intel Xeon processor performance running in memory SAP HANA workloads over the generation it replaces, demonstrating what the products will deliver to meet the most increasingly complex demands of big data in-memory workloads in the modern data center, end quote. If, and I would not blame you, have absolutely no idea what the hell SAP HANA is, it is a deployable on-premise or the cloud. It is a in-memory data platform that allows you to basically have business intelligence and allows a foundation of various databases. Its primary function is a database server and then is used to retrieve data as requested by various applications. It's essentially advanced analytics as well. So, for example, you've got spatial data processing, streaming analysis, graph data. Basically, this is the cloud 2.0, I guess you could say, and it's been pretty much synonymous with computing for some time now. I believe it was first shipping, like, I don't know, the early 10s, like 10, maybe 11, something like that. So it's been around for a while. I don't really know it too well, but I have heard of it. So obviously these type of technologies in the cloud are going to become quite important. The reason I think this is interesting is obviously with EPYC, also known as, Ryzen for the data center, also known as the pools. It's obvious that Intel are feeling some level of pressure, which is fine. That's good for Intel and AMD, because obviously that means for customers you're going to be looking at increased levels of performance. Intel have also demonstrated for the first time persistent memory solutions in DIMM form factor, and this is based upon the 3D X-Point media, and this is Intel's persistent memory. So what this essentially means is that it's going to be stored in essentially DIMMs, which are non-volatile. Therefore, if you have to do power cycling, that type of stuff, data is going to remain resident in memory. It's very cool. And once again, for applications like, the cloud, for big data, deep learning, SAP HANA, and so on and so on and so on, this type of technology is going to be very cool. It's going to be very interesting how all of this works in conjunction with Ryzen in the future, and how AMD are going to be trying to counter all of this. So that I don't get a copyright strike, could you do me a favor? Could you go to another YouTube tab, ideally, type in Queen Under Pressure, play the beginning for about 30 to 40 seconds, and then come back to this video and, Bob's your uncle. Because Intel are definitely under pressure. As we all know, Ryzen is out, and Intel have been fairly calm publicly, but there is murmurs that they are definitely under a lot of stress in the off season. So what they're in the back end, non-publicly. So supposedly they're trying to boost the sales of the 200 series chipsets and Kaby Lake. Now, it's without question that the sales of Kaby Lake and the actual public reception of Kaby Lake hasn't been quite what you'd imagine. In other words, it's been a bit more lukewarm. And according to, and this is going back a bit, we already covered this a few days ago, or a few weeks ago rather, there was a poll on 3dcenter.org, and basically they did, I guess, a little bit of due diligence to find out how the public are receiving various processors. Now, Ryzen 5 had a very positive reception with quite a lot of interest to actually purchase. This is not so much the case with Kaby Lake, with a positive reception of only around 12% and an intent of purchase or interest of purchase of only around 6%, which is kind of minuscule, well below even Skylake, which wasn't as high as even Haswell. I guess my point being that they are under the stress of actually making it so that, well, they want people to buy it. So originally, there were various MSI motherboards which were being bundled so that you could actually buy the Optane cache SSD cheaper. It wasn't free, but the bundle would be cheaper. But supposedly in a bid to increase the sales of the 200, Intel is going to be coordinating bundles with motherboard vendors across various brands with Optane cache SSDs. Essentially, it's going to be almost an inventory clearing exercise. That's how it's being reported by websites such as DigiTimes. Why? Well, I'm glad you asked, my friend, my buddy, my cohort in all of this technology sea of doom and despair. Perhaps I might be going slightly overboard with that, but yeah, Kaby Lake's not really that old, but Coffee Lake is not too long in the distant future. So for those who do not know what Coffee Lake is, and I don't blame you because there are so many sodding CPU launches at the moment, it's a bit difficult to keep up with them. Coffee Lake is going to set the bar of regular mainstream mainstream desktop platform, a CPU platform from Intel, to be 6 cores. So in other words, what's going to happen is we're going to see the upping of processor cores from 4 all the way to 6. That might not sound much, but from Intel's side of things, that's very impressive because supposedly they're actually pushing up the release date by quite a bit. It's a bit weird because from what the rumours are, the socket is going to be almost identical, and therefore what they're trying to do is, I guess, have a large install base of the 200 series boards. And the rumours have it, and yes, it is a rumour, so it's not guaranteed, that if you already own a motherboard that's a 200 series board, you should simply be able to flash and be simply ready for the Coffee Lake CPU, even though there is supposedly going to be a 300 series board which is specific for Coffee Lake. It will be introducing the new chipset, so it is a bad option necessarily to just buy with the intent of upgrading. But if you already own, just for the sake of argument, a 7600K, and let's say you bought one on launch, and you do own a fairly decent motherboard, and let's say your motherboard vendor happens to be fairly decent at pushing out updates, there is a good possibility, I'm not saying it's a guarantee, but there's a good possibility that you'll be able to simply install a Coffee Lake CPU, which would be a good thing for Intel's point of view, not so good for the motherboard's vendor's point of view, I guess. Because obviously, you're not going to buy a 200 series board if the 300 series boards are out, so it's basically just cutting into their own sales figures, but we'll just have to wait and see what happens. Anyway, it's also going to be on the same process, so we're still going to be seeing a 14nm 6-core processor, which means in theory we're going to already have slightly higher TDP as well, which isn't necessarily bad. It really depends upon if Intel can improve the TIM, which obviously was a sore point with Kaby Lake, and the fact that Intel have recently said to overclockers, yeah, you don't like excess heat with your 7700K? Okay, well, we've got your back, don't worry. Our solution, just don't overclock. That sounds like a absolutely beautiful solution, Intel. That certainly is gonna make the gamers absolutely love you. Yeah, just don't overclock. It doesn't matter that the TIM we've used is quite literally the worst thing you could use. You might as well just use, dirt from outside. Just don't overclock it. It's absolutely great. Maybe I'm slightly exaggerating, but if you actually delid your CPU, there are quite large improvements in performance. But obviously the fact of the matter is, how many folks do you really know who are even fairly decently knowledged in PC? That was possibly the worst sentence I could use, but fairly well educated in hardware that are actually comfortable delidding their delidding their CPU after they've just bought it. Not too many, because ultimately, if it goes wrong, which it can, even if you buy a specific device to help you with delidding, yeah, it's a bit risky. So, and to be honest with you, here's the thing: you shouldn't have to do delidding. That, I think, is what actually is pissing people off more. Not the fact that you can delid and it is risking your warranty. I think the fact you have to delid if you're really, 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 really worried about your temperatures. But obviously, that's down to Silicon Lottery somewhat as well. Anyway, this video's turned out to be a bit longer than what I had thought it was going to be. So take care of yourselves. Bye for now.